I don't really like touching like bodily fluids or, people to a certain extent. And I did some research on what a pharmacist was, and it was more about the treatment of a patient rather than the diagnosing of a patient. And that's what I really enjoyed learning when I was taking these science classes, these health classes offered by my high school. And I was like, oh, well, why let's see what's like around here. Where can I learn about pharmacy school? So, I just typed onto Google because I had to do this all by myself. My parents didn't go to college or anything. And I came across Purdue and I was just like, you know what, I might apply. I was very unfortunate and I wasn't able to go and see college campuses or anything. And I got accepted into Purdue and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out on a whim. And I do not regret that decision at all in my life.
Thanks, Bree.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Danielle, or Danny. Most people call me Danny. I'm a P2, so that means I'm in my second year of professional school. I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, which I don't know if most of you have been to like Charleston or Myrtle Beach, but it's kind of like 2 hours from Charleston, 3 hours from Myrtle Beach, if you've heard of any of those places. And why I chose pharmacy, I honestly love this question because it brings up good memories for me. So in high school, as you'll hear from most people who chose pharmacy, I've always been interested in science, was always super good at science and liked it. But the thing that really solidified me wanting to be a pharmacist is my mom's husband actually was diagnosed with cancer. And so I would see my mom constantly having to go into the pharmacy and interact with the pharmacist. And she personally just had a really great experience with the pharmacist. And so I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, as Bree said, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so once I saw what an actual pharmacist does, so a lot of people think that they just count pills, but it's so much more than that. It's about interacting with patients, making lasting impact on patients. And so I really took a liking to that. And for me, I chose Purdue because I literally typed in best pharmacy schools and Purdue popped up. They also had the 6-year program. So that was something that really caught my eye. And so what it really came down to was I visited Purdue because I was stuck between University of Kentucky and Purdue because they both have the 6-year program. But it came down to when I actually visited Purdue's campus, it was just the impact that the people had on me once I visited. They already made me feel like I was at home compared to, and this is not to talk down on University of Kentucky because everyone's experience is different. But personally for me, when I went there, I didn't feel as welcome there as I did at Purdue.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. So I heard both of you guys talk about wanting to be in healthcare. I think that's a really common thing that I hear from students is I really want to help people. I really want to be in the healthcare field. And like Bree said, I don't know that I want the blood and guts and bodily fluids. I don't know that I want to be in school for the next 10 plus years if you were to consider med school or dental school. Pharmacy is really clean. You don't really have to touch people. You're not going to get that 2 a.m. emergency phone call. It really is, after, at least at Purdue, after 6 years, you have the title of doctor. You are a leader in your community. You're in that healthcare role, you have that title, but it's 6 years, it's clean, and you are truly helping people, especially through this COVID pandemic. We have learned so much about how valuable the pharmacist's role is in the healthcare team. And so it's really become such a popular choice. I mean, look at how many people are here tonight. So that really says a lot about this amazing choice for a profession. So both Bree and Danny are in our 6-year PharmD program. So that is 2 years of pre-pharmacy coursework. They then applied to pharmacy school, much like you would apply to a med school or a dental school. And then it's 4 years of pharmacy school. So at least at Purdue, you will graduate after 6 years with your doctorate of pharmacy. We have another major in the College of Pharmacy. We call it BSPS, and it stands for a Bachelor of Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences. This is probably going to be a huge overgeneralization, but to kind of give you the main difference between our two degrees. If you are the person that you want to cure cancer, you want to cure Alzheimer's, you want to take a current drug and make it work faster, make it less expensive, make it less painful, you really probably want the pharmaceutical sciences. It's really focused on drug discovery and drug development, and it tends to be pretty research-based. The other program, our 6-year PharmD, very similar coursework. However, the PharmD has the added component where you then take that information and learn how to talk to a patient about it. So how do I have a knowledge level of this for the drugs, but I need to talk to a patient who doesn't have that knowledge level. And so I have to explain to them the importance of dosing and the importance of complying with your medication and why that's so important. So it's more patient-based as opposed to the pharmaceutical sciences, which is going to be more research-based. And that's not to say that if you do pharmaceutical sciences, you won't work with patients, or if you do the PharmD, you won't do research. I'm just trying to kind of give you a big picture difference between the two degrees at Purdue. If listening to both of those, you think, wow, they both sound kind of cool, I really don't know yet, that is just fine. The first 2 years of both programs are almost identical in terms of coursework. So while you're taking classes during your freshman year, you can be thinking about those two different career paths. You can do some exploration, you can do some shadowing to figure out which maybe makes more sense for you. And during your first semester, you take a class called Pharm 100, which is an orientation class to all the different careers within the College of Pharmacy and all of the pharmacy professional careers. So you'll learn about all of your options with either the PharmD or the BSPS to really get a good idea of what your future could potentially look like. Bree and Danielle, will you talk a little bit about, and I understand you will probably change your mind 18 times between now and when you graduate, but as of today, what do you think you want to do with your degree? Like, what does your career path look like?
So, like Miss Pedley says, you may go into this thinking that you want one thing, and then as you learn more, you're like, oh, you're like a kid in a candy store. You're like, I could do this, I could do that. Because when you first learn about a pharmacist and what they can do, you're like, oh, only working at CVS or a hospital. But as you work through the program, there's so many more outlets to what you can do with a pharmacist degree. So for me, my goals right now is that I really want to work in cardiology. I really like learning about the heart and treatment plans for heart failure, blood pressure, and heart attacks. And I also like pediatrics. And so I either want to work in a hospital or in an outpatient setting. So kind of like I don't know if any of you may know, your grandparents may go to what we call a warfarin clinic to kind of just check their blood and stuff like that. It's more patient interaction, or I can do both. My possibilities are limitless, and I can't choose right now.
And that is okay.
Yeah, just kind of going off of that, I feel like Purdue does a great job of like expanding your knowledge on the sectors of pharmacy and the options that you have, because I came into school thinking like, yeah, CVS, hospital, and then Pharm 100 really introduces you to a lot of different options where you're like, I've never even heard of that. And so it's really cool. But for me, I am currently on the nuclear track. for most of you guys, I'm sure you probably don't know what it is, but nuclear pharmacy is basically, in simple terms, when you go to the hospital and you have to take like medicine for a PET scan, basically nuclear pharmacists will work in a lab and make that medicine for you and then send it to the hospitals. So it's a little different than most settings of pharmacy in that we don't really interact with patients. We more so interact with the hospital. And also our hours are kind of crazy. So typically a shift could be from 12 a.m. to maybe 5 a.m. in the morning. That's typically the first shift. So I kind of like that because I'm a night owl. So I really would like a job like that where I have majority of the day to do what I want. And then at nighttime, since I'm already going to be up, I'm doing that. But yeah, I've definitely taken an interest in nuclear pharmacy. And I think Purdue and maybe 2 other schools are the only colleges that actually offer the nuclear track. So it kind of makes you stand out if that's something that you want to do, because companies that you work for won't necessarily have to pay to get you trained. You'll already be trained. So that kind of will make you be placed above other people because they won't have to pay for you to get trained.
Yeah, so Danielle, you said it perfectly. The Purdue is one of 4 pharmacy schools that offer this certification in nuclear pharmacy. So it's a series of 5 classes that you take during your professional years at Purdue, no additional time or no additional cost, and easily fits within your curriculum. So it's not like you're going, oh my gosh, I have to take all of these extra classes that other students aren't taking. It's like 1 class per semester that kind of fit your electives anyway. We really encourage all of our students to take at least the first class in the sequence to see if it's something that you like, because if you enjoy it, you will then become eligible to sit for the certification exam to become a nuclear pharmacist. We lay it all out for you and make it as simple as possible. And then you have this extra certification in your pocket. If you never use it, that's okay. You still can say, like, if you're in an interview and there are 5 equally qualified candidates, but then you say, oh, but I'm also certified as a nuclear pharmacist, that just makes you more marketable. So it's nice to have this additional certification. If for some reason you didn't do it, and then let's say 10 years down the road, you go, you know, that nuclear pharmacy thing, I should have listened. I should have done that. For you to go back to school to get that certification is years worth of coursework and thousands of dollars. So it's really a cool option that Purdue offers. And like I said, we're one of only 4 pharmacy schools that offers that sequence of classes.
I would also like to add, just because I'm a big advocate of nuclear pharmacy, we only work with about 20 drugs. So for people who are like, oh, I don't want to work with 1,000 different drugs, that's kind of one of the things that I like. It's kind of consistent because you only work with about 20 drugs and they're pretty much all the same. So that's another added bonus for that.
Well, yeah. And I feel like that allows you to feel like you're a true expert in that area. And I feel like that's always kind of a confidence booster when you're like, I know all this, like I know it. Yeah. So the fact that you guys are here tonight listening to this, I know that you're now in the process of considering lots of different colleges. You're considering lots of different majors. So I don't feel like our job is to convince you that Purdue Pharmacy is the right fit. But I do think that our job is to share information about what sets us apart, so that when you are looking at other colleges and when you are looking at other majors, you can go, oh yeah, and then you have this knowledge to really do an educated compare and contrast. So the nuclear pharmacy is a pretty big deal. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that sets Purdue apart. Another thing, and they both mentioned this during their intro, is that we offer a 6-year program. So it's basically a 2+4. What that means is you do not get an undergraduate degree. You do 2 years of pre-pharmacy coursework, and those are the prereqs that you need to be eligible to apply to pharmacy school. You then do 4 years of pharmacy school and you get a PharmD. Professionally, it does not matter that you don't have your undergraduate degree because a PharmD is a higher degree anyway. That is your professional degree. The majority of pharmacy schools do require an undergraduate degree. So the fact that we do a 2+4 as opposed to a 4+4, that's 2 less years of college, 2 less years of tuition, 2 years earlier of getting out and making that salary. So while those first 2 years of pre-pharm are challenging, we really feel like the payoff is less school and making a salary quicker. So that 2+4 really is pretty unique. The fact that we offer that BSPS, the pharmaceutical sciences degree, we are only one of a handful of colleges that offer a degree in pharmaceutical sciences. So it's really unique and it's a nice feature to offer our students. A lot of times students will use that BSPS degree as a stepping stone to medical school, dental school, optometry, PT, OT, PA, really any of those professional programs. Almost all of the prereqs for those medical professional programs are built into the BSPS degree. So I'll just use medical school as an example. As medical schools are evaluating their literally thousands of applications, the number 1 major that students choose when they're pre-med is biology. So they're looking through these thousands of applications and they're biology, pharmacy. That's unique. When there are thousands of applications and you can find a way to stand out, always choose the way to stand out. So having that BSPS degree is a really great path to medical school. And the students of ours at Purdue that have done BSPS and then applied to medical school said they were far advanced than their peers when it came to medication, how it works in the body, how it breaks down in the body, because you just don't learn that in pre-med or in med school. So it really was a bonus for those students that pursued the BSPS and went on to medical school. I believe another thing that sets us apart is we have a retail pharmacy right in our pharmacy building, right in the middle of campus. And that is open to students, faculty, staff, and the community. Students during their first year of pharmacy school take a class where they have to actually work in that pharmacy. So will you guys both talk a little bit about your experience working, we call it PUP, Purdue University Pharmacy. Will you guys talk a little bit about your experience, maybe like your previous pharmacy experience and then your experience working in PUP?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just disclaimer, my time in PUP got cut short due to COVID, but I digress. So my previous pharmacy experience has been, I've been working at a hospital for 4 years. So hospital and retail, and not retail, and working in your own retail pharmacy is a lot different. So during PUP, you learn how to read a prescription. You grab the medication off the shelves. You write up kind of like so the professor has you give him like a rundown of why this, what is this medication, how does it work, and what are some common side effects, and how would you counsel a patient on this. And then in the second part, you will counsel a patient, an actual student, faculty, or member of the community, and kind of get comfortable with communicating in a non-medical terminology way for these patients. And you're also learning the top 100 most commonly prescribed drugs. And then you have what we call as a recitation, which is like a second part of the class where you go over everything that you've learned, and you take quizzes, and the quizzes were all over the top 100 medications. So I think, so if I had to kind of comb down what I said was you learn how to read a prescription, like we call that intake. So you learn how to read a prescription, you learn how to fill it, and you learn how to counsel it, all while learning these medications that you haven't seen before.
I think like going off of that, so for me personally, before PUP or before working in the pharmacy on campus, I had no pharmacy experience at all. So I was very nervous because I'm like, oh my gosh, this sound like from what she's describing, it sounds like, oh my God, this is a lot of stuff. Like and it was only my first year of pharmacy school. So I'm like, how am I going to counsel people on medicines that I've never even heard of? But just to like kind of relieve that stress that you guys may feel from hearing that, it really is, I won't say simple, but it really is a great way to get you started into what being a pharmacist actually is like. So for instance, like she was saying, you have to counsel on patients, but our teacher allows us to look these drugs up. So you're not just having to know off of your head, like, oh, this drug causes this and this and that. The teacher allows you to look up, what this drug is used for, the side effects of the drug, which makes it a little easier because I went into it like, I've never heard of this drug before. But it really is a great way to jumpstart your career in pharmacy, whether you want to work in a retail setting or not. It just kind of gets you used to, like she said, counseling patients in their terms instead of using big words that you may learn in class. It's really a great way to help you with that. So I honestly, that was one of my favorite classes, just because it gave me, we learn in class all the time about all these diseases and medicines, but we never really get that real practice. So I felt like this was the first time I actually got real practice. And I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous the first couple of times, but eventually like you get used to it and you're like, I actually really enjoy this. Like I've honestly discovered that I really wanted to do pharmacy once I've done that, even though I don't want to do retail. I did enjoy counseling patients in that class.
Yeah, it's really.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bree.
Sorry, Ms. Pedley. I didn't mean to like scare or anything, but it's really great practice because I always, even to this day, I get nervous counseling or just talking with people that I'm not familiar with, and having that class really helped me kind of overcome those nerves. And like she said, it's great practice. It's great practice to kind of jumpstart that into what's pharmacy like.
Yeah, and it's a low stakes environment. You have your instructor, you have TAs, you have upper class students all helping you along the way. So it's not like they just throw you out there and you have to research it on your own and hope you did it right. You've got guidance all along the way to make sure. So just to kind of share with you what the experience was like, I'm going to imagine your experience at a CVS or a Walgreens or a Kroger. You go to pick up your prescription, the pharmacist or the pharmacy tech hands you the pill bottle, probably already in the bag, probably already stapled. They hand it to you. They say, do you have any questions? 9 times out of 10, you don't. And so you say no. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. I would imagine that is a very common interaction at a pharmacy. At Purdue's pharmacy, it is very different. They will open the pill bottle in front of you, put one of the pills in the lid and show you what it looks like. They will use open-ended questions to talk to you about dosing and side effects and encourage you to ask questions because they are learning as you are learning. It is the most amazing experience. And when I walked away, I was like, that's how it's supposed to be. Like it was so cool and so just a wonderful experience to actually see a pharmacist counseling a patient. And they then take that knowledge wherever they go and realize the importance of truly counseling patients. So it really is a very cool experience. You guys want to add anything to that?
I also feel like it kind of makes you, after you have the class, it kind of makes you look at like real pharmacists like in a pharmacy and you're like, well, you didn't ask me if I knew anything about this drug or side effects I might experience. I mean, it doesn't make you look down on the pharmacist, but it's just kind of like, well, I learned to do all these things. And I think it's a good way to try to reverse the way that pharmacy has been in terms of like she said, when you go to the pharmacy, typically they just ask you, do you have questions? And so even if someone has a question, they're kind of scared they may be scared to ask or don't know what to ask. And so it's a good way to train the new pharmacists coming to, ask patients open-ended questions so that it kind of leads them into asking things they may not have asked before.
Yeah, thanks. Will you guys talk a little bit about, maybe tell everyone what your favorite class has been so far? And I would say include pre-pharmacy and pharmacy school. So share your favorite class and why. And I won't say least favorite, I'll say your most challenging class and why.
Did you say a favorite pre-pharmacy and?
Either, just including pre-pharmacy and pharmacy school. Which one would be your favorite of all of them?
My most favorite class. So once you get into the pharmacy program, every semester you have what we called a pharmacy skills lab. And in that class, you learn a whole bunch of things that is really applicable of becoming a pharmacist. You learn skills that you didn't know you had before, and it's really hard to explain why this class is my favorite. It's basically the class that taught me what a pharmacist is, and it's really helped me become a pharmacist throughout all these years. So you do like blood pressure, you learn how to inject insulin, not on yourself, but you learn how, you learn different diseases, you learn how to write up on a patient chart, you learn how to counsel patients even more than from pup. And there's just some of the classes towards the end of the semester are really fun. Like you learn how to make dog treats, you learn how to make capsules and creams and just compounding and stuff like that. And it's just a class that I really look forward to because I take the most out from that class because it helps me in different aspects of becoming a pharmacist rather than just knowing the drugs. My most challenging class, that's kind of hard. Like, would you say most challenging ever or most challenging continuously, Miss Pedley?
You decide.
My most challenging class would have to be a class called pharmacokinetics. When I came to Purdue, I never took calculus, and I had to take calculus here, and I was okay at it. I'm okay at math, so okay, awesome. I get to this class and everything I know about math gets thrown out the window. But it's a very important class because it goes more in depth about what your body does when you take a medication, and it's very important for a pharmacist to know. But that was really one of my most challenging classes because no matter how I looked at the material in different angles, I just still couldn't grasp it myself.
Thanks, Bree. So I just want to make one comment about the skills lab that Bree was talking about. So you do kind of practice counseling with your peers, but they also bring in actors or community members, or even like when you learn about asthma, for example, they might bring in a bunch of kids and you have to actually teach a child how to use an inhaler. And that kid might start crying. That kid might not do what you ask them to do. So it is real life situations, again, very low stakes, but real life situations where you are truly learning how to be a pharmacist. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, she took mine. That's my favorite class too. So I'll just kind of speak on a second class that I find that I like. I feel like therapeutics, a lot of people would probably look at me and say, like, what? But it really, therapeutics is the basis behind, like, is your probably your biggest class once you get into pharmacy. It's where you learn the disease states, how to treat them. And so it's probably also that goes along with the most challenging class. But it's also one of my favorite classes because to me, it's like, I felt like there may have been classes that I may have taken before and been like, why am I really taking it? But I feel like with therapeutics, it's like I'm finally learning the stuff that will help me to become a pharmacist. And it's like some things may be challenging to me when we learn certain disease states. But one thing that I've always, and a professor once said this, was when you are learning about disease states, try to relate them to someone in your family who may have them. So to me, it's like when I learn the disease states and I have someone in my family who may have, for instance, we just learned about diabetes. I'm now able to go back like, oh, you're taking this medication and I just learned about it. And so I really enjoy that. And it definitely solidifies the fact that like I like pharmacy. So it's challenging, but I also enjoy being able to go back and be like, oh, I remember this drug, or I know how to treat this disease state. Yeah, I think therapeutics is probably my favorite and most challenging class.
Perfect answer. So we've talked a lot about academics, and why don't you guys talk a little bit about what do you do for fun? What do you do outside of class? Kind of how do you find that work-life balance? How do you de-stress? Talk a little bit about that.
So a couple things I do to de-stress, because I am a 5'1" ball of stress always. Um, I've always been like that. So one of the things that I really enjoy doing is watching TV. I know some people are like, well, watching TV. Well, I really like to binge watch TV shows. But also I'm involved in a lot of clubs, and being part of those clubs is being part of something bigger than myself and bigger than pharmacy and me just being a student. And I really get to learn more about different aspects of, on campus, pharmacy, all of that. And I really enjoy, because sometimes they have events that I can join and just get out of the house and just breathe and de-stress.
Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the type of person, I struggle with mental health, but I'm super big on mental health. And I like to be super transparent about that. Because I know a lot of college students, like they go through that and they feel like they don't have anybody to talk to, or they feel like they're the only person. But I've definitely learned to take days for myself. So whether that be, I like to do yoga. They actually have a place near campus where you can go and do like hot yoga, where you're like basically in a sauna when you're doing yoga, and it's really like peaceful. A lot of Purdue students go and do it, and it's super cheap. Or some days I literally just walk around my apartment complex. Or there's even some days where I just lay in my bed. Some days that's just all I need, is to just lay in my bed and not think about school. And so those are typically things that I like to do. I also like to hang out with non-pharmacy friends. So I have pharmacy friends who I hang out with sometimes, but when I'm really feeling stressed, I like to hang out with those friends who are not in pharmacy, because I know a lot of times my pharmacy friends will be stuck talking about this class or this exam or what we have coming up. And so I definitely like to hang out with my non-pharmacy friends when I feel super stressed. Because it's like, even if I can just vent to them, they're just like, wow, that sounds impressive that you're doing all of that. And so, yeah, those are typically things I like to do when I'm stressed.
Nice. Did either of you do the learning community? No. Okay. So pharmacy offers what we call a learning community, which is a housing option. It is optional, not required, but if you did choose to do the learning community, you would be put in a residence hall. I think this year is Owen Hall. And you are guaranteed to be on a floor with other pharmacy students. So it will be either pre-pharmacy or BSPS students. And if you look on our website and look at what a typical like freshman year class schedule looks like, everybody's taking the same classes. Everybody's going to be in Chem 129. Everybody's going to be in Calc 1. Everybody's going to be in general biology. I suppose if you brought in dual credit or AP, you may not be in all of those, but everybody's pretty much got the same schedule. So the benefit of a learning community is you now have built-in study buddies. You have a built-in friend to walk to class with, a built-in friend to do homework, study for quizzes, study for exams. So it's a really nice way to surround yourself with like-minded people. An interesting story that I heard a couple of years ago is there was, I don't know, for example, let's say it's a biology exam and it was at 7:30 in the morning. And everybody in the learning community decided, let's all meet in the lobby at 7 and we'll walk to the exam together. So they're all in the lobby waiting for everybody, and Susie never showed up. But because they were all such a close group of people, they knew that Susie was missing. They went and knocked on her door. She had slept through her alarm. They were able to get her up so she was not late and did not miss the exam. So there were benefits to doing this learning community and kind of going through this together. But on the flip side of that, I think what Danny said is exactly true as well. There is a value in having some non-pharmacy friends. So you'll figure out what makes the most sense for you. I just wanted to make sure you knew about that option. If maybe you think, gosh, I'm not going to know anybody at Purdue. I know if I live with a bunch of people that are in my major, that's a great way to get connected. So that is definitely an option for those of you that are interested. I'm going to try and wrap it up here in case you all have questions for us. So Bree and Danny, if you could finalize with one parting thought, maybe some words of wisdom, something you wish you knew in high school, some techniques to handle the transition from high school to college. I don't know, maybe something they could be thinking about now, just some parting words that you think would be helpful for them to hear.
So some parting words that I wish I knew from high school was, just because you get an F on a test doesn't mean it's the end. Because I guarantee you, if it's not in pre-pharmacy or pharmacy or whatever major you choose, you're gonna end up getting a bad grade on a test. And that's just a part of college life. And you can't beat yourself up over it, because some stuff, whether it's pharmacy major or not, some stuff is very difficult. And you got to learn. You learn as time goes on. You learn how to study. You learn how to conform to how you learn best. You learn how you learn. I don't know how that makes sense, but not everybody knows, well, how's the best that I learn? And you learn how the best you learn. Okay, I'm confusing myself now, but and also with that, don't give up. Don't give up, never. Because honestly, at the end of the road, all the struggle is worth it. No matter whether it's at Purdue or another college or pharmacy or whatever. If you give up, you're not going to learn. You're not going to learn what you could have had, basically. That's all I gotta say. Sorry.
Thanks, Bree.
I would say my biggest thing that I wish I would have been better at before coming to college, and even I'm kind of better at it now, but the beginning years of college was comparison. I think that oftentimes, even like, I feel like my parents growing up, compared me a lot to like everybody else in school. So that's kind of where I always compared myself to other people, and I never kind of got out of that habit of comparison. But I definitely would recommend that, like, even now in your first couple of years of college, wherever you may go, just know that you're there for a reason, and that what you may be good at one thing and somebody else may be good at another thing. So sorry to tell you, you're not going to all be good at everything. And so, for instance, if you happen to make a certain grade on a test, and your friend makes a better grade, or somebody makes a better grade, that doesn't mean you're worth any less. And I think that's like the biggest thing that I had to learn in college is some people are going to be better at some things than I'm going to be. And then I'm going to be better at some things than other people are going to be. And so just not comparing yourself and knowing that you're there for a reason.
Very good advice, both of you. Okay, so a question. Please discuss how tuition works for the 6-year program. Okay, great question. So during your pre-farm years, your tuition, your housing, your fees, your food costs, just like any major across campus. However, when you get into the professional program, there is what's called a differential fee. So that is an additional fee that professional students pay for the benefit of being in the professional program. That fee is paid by pharmacy school. Students that are in vet school pay a differential or a diff fee. Even some types of engineering requires a differential fee. Those that are in professional flight pay a differential fee. So it's just an added cost. It's about $6,000 per semester, additional fees for the professional program. If a student is awarded scholarships through Purdue, I can't speak for every single scholarship, but it's my understanding that the majority of those scholarships are 4-year scholarships. So it won't pay for your entire 6 years, but it will pay for the first 4. So it will cover your first 2 years of pre-pharmacy and carries over into pharmacy school. And then you would be responsible for your final 2 years. And I want to talk, speaking of the professional program, just a little bit about kind of the numbers, which I think a lot of parents are interested in. So every year, Purdue's College of Pharmacy receives around 400 to 500 applications. We interview 250 students, and we bring in a class size of 150. Historically, of that 150, around 130 are Purdue pre-pharm students. So they started at Purdue as a pre-pharm and ended up at our pharmacy school. So it's not that they get kind of a bonus point for being a pre-pharm student at Purdue, but they do have access to us. So when I'm meeting with my students, I am constantly asking my pre-pharmacy students, okay, let's talk about your classes. Let's talk about are you thinking about letters of recommendation? Are you doing your shadowing? So I'm sharing with them all of the expectations for the application process, so it doesn't feel secretive, it does not feel mysterious, and then they know what the expectations are. I saw another question come up. So if you're accepted to Purdue's pre-pharm program, are you guaranteed admission to Pharm D if you meet all the requirements, or do you have to apply for admission and take the PCAT? Great question. So no to the PCAT. That is another unique thing about Purdue, is we do not require students to take the PCAT. So the PCAT is the entrance exam to pharmacy school, much like the MCAT for med school or the LSAT for law school. Students that apply to Purdue's pharmacy school do not have to take the PCAT. The majority of pharmacy schools will require it. We have found that it really does not predict success in pharmacy school much beyond the first or second semester. So we thought if we can eliminate a standardized test, we're going to. So Purdue students do not have to take the PCAT. But we do not, and actually there is not a single pharmacy school out there that does an automatic admission. There is a governing body. So we are an accredited pharmacy school, and all pharmacy schools that are accredited have to have an application process. There are some pharmacy schools that do the application process on the front end, meaning right from high school, they interview, they fill out their application. If they meet those standards at that time and take the classes, maintain the GPA, then yes, they will be in pharmacy school. Purdue does not do that. We have chosen to do our interview process during their sophomore year. So students still have to complete all of the same prereq classes, but they will go through an interview during the first, actually their interview will be the second semester of their sophomore year. And like I said, we interview 250 students for a class size of 150. We do offer something called a priority admission, and you can read about this on our website if you Google it. And what that does is if students take the majority of their pre-pharm classes at Purdue, maintain a 3.25 GPA, and no core math science pre-pharm prereq class below a C-, they are guaranteed an interview. So that's kind of our way of saying, congratulations, you're a great student. We're going to take one of those stressors away and we will guarantee you an interview. So I'm hoping that answered some of your questions for the application process. Are there any other questions that you guys have? If you want to either drop them in the chat, or since we haven't had a ton of questions come through, if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask our students that way, that would be just fine. Anything you're dying to know about pharmacy school? Or just about Purdue in general even? Out of how many students are 130? I'm not sure I understand that question. Out of how many students are 130? You mean of total Purdue? Is that, maybe I do understand. So every year, Purdue College of Pharmacy brings in a freshman class of around 300. So we're one of probably the smallest majors on campus. So we bring in a freshman class of 300 students. Some of those are pre-pharm and some of those are BSPS. By the time their sophomore year comes around, which is when they'll start the application process, there are probably around 200 that are going to apply to pharmacy school. So some of those are BSPS and just have no intention of applying to pharmacy school. Some maybe did not do so well in chemistry and thought that's a sign, pharmacy is not a great career for me. So I think what you were asking is, of that 130, what did they start at? So they're around 200 and around 130 are offered a seat. Okay, now the questions are coming quick. Okay, do we do residencies anytime during pharmacy school? So residencies would actually be after pharmacy school. Bree or Danny, do you guys want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. So residencies, so during your 4th year of pharmacy school, you don't have any classes. It's all just what we call rotations, which is basically you working with another pharmacist as practically as a pharmacist and learning, like applying all the knowledge that you learned in the first 3 years in a clinical setting. So like in a hospital or at Walgreens or even at a pharmaceutical company. So it's really cool about that. And then during your 4th year, you will, if you want to, a residency is not required, but you can apply for this thing we call mid-year, and then you apply to residency programs. And then after you graduate, you start that residency program. And that residency program kind of just helps you get more specific in what you would like to do. So you can get one in just hospital pharmacy. So you get a little title after your name that you are, I don't remember what the title is for someone in that gets their, is it BCPS? I don't know. Okay, never mind. I'm just confusing myself. But you get more specific in what you want to do. So you can even go and do a second residency where you specialize in oncology, which is like cancer, or cardiology, which is the heart, or pediatrics, where you work with kids.
Yeah, so I mentioned this in the chat. If we do not get to your questions, I put my email in the chat. Please send those questions to me. I can answer them via email, and I can also get you connected to a current student. So maybe Danny or Bree or any one of our other students that you can then kind of communicate by email to ask even more directed questions. I saw a question on what can we do to be more or most competitive and increase our chances of being admitted to pharmacy school. So we have what's called the puzzle pieces, and it's pretty common for all of our pre-pharmacy students to see them. And really it's just a list of all of the things or all of the components that our admissions committee is looking for. And I don't mean to make this sound simplistic because it's not simple. But the reality is if a pre-pharmacy student completes those puzzle pieces, does what we are asking them to do, they are going to be a competitive candidate for pharmacy school. What happens is students don't think that that's true. And they think, well, I've got a 4.0. I don't need to do that shadowing stuff, right? It is a holistic review and you really do need to meet all of the components. So every year we do have students with a 4.0 that do not get in. And on the flip side of that, every year we have students with a 2.9 that do get in because they knocked it out of the park in all of the other areas of their application. So yes, academics matters and grades are important. You need to be successful academically, but it's not everything. So we do not expect perfection in all areas. So if you are worried that maybe one thing might be a weakness, you really can kind of make up for some of those weaknesses in other areas of the application.
Can I also add?
Yes, please.
From a student's perspective, so I feel like everybody was freaking out about the whole application process and like, oh my gosh, are they gonna like me? And what I will say is it simply is they just want to see if you're able to talk to other people, communicate with other people, because literally in my interview, I think we talked about like a medical brigade that I went on. And that's literally all we talked about in my interview. I had one of my mentors who graduated, who was a couple years older than me. She said all they talked about in their interview was like baking. They talked about that the whole time because they saw that she was super interested in baking. And so like the beginning of the interview, obviously there'll be a few questions, that they'll ask that are, who are you? Like, how would you describe yourself? But once they see that you're able to communicate and have a conversation, the interview is really relaxed. They just simply want to see that you're able to communicate and speak well to other people. So it's 100. It's not anything, I wouldn't say don't like take it seriously, but also don't freak out too much about it because they really just want to see if you're able to communicate.
No, Danny, you're 100% correct. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you cannot communicate with the patient, you are not going to be a good pharmacist. And I think, my opinion, when you think about a pharmacist, they are the easiest and most accessible of all of the healthcare team. If you wanted to ask your doctor a question, you either have to call in and hope somebody calls you back by the end of the day. You definitely can't just walk into a hospital or a clinic and ask if you can just have a quick chat with your physician. That just doesn't happen. But you could walk into a CVS or a Walgreens and you could talk to a pharmacist right then, even if you don't have a prescription there. You have to be a good communicator as a pharmacist. And often, in a very short amount of time, these patients are going to share very personal, often very embarrassing things, and you have to be able to build that rapport and you have to be a good communicator. So yes, Danny, 100% what you said is totally accurate. It is almost 7 o'clock and I want to be very aware of everyone's time. I want to say thank you to everybody for being here, for listening, for gathering some more information, for showing an interest in Purdue's College of Pharmacy. Like I said, please follow up with any questions that we didn't get to tonight. My email is in the chat. I would be happy to get you connected to a current student. Let me know if you're more interested in BSPS or pre-pharm, and I'll get you connected to a student that you can then do a follow-up with and get some more in-depth information. So thank you all so much for being here. Truly appreciate your time and attention. Hail Purdue. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Megan, did you have a question? Maybe she left and forgot her computer was on. All right, thanks you guys. I so love doing these with you.
Thanks, Miss Pedley.
I honestly enjoy these so much.
I do too.
I wish people weren't as scared, because I know they probably have like a lot of questions. I just wish they weren't as scared to ask. Because
I know. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I like talking. So.
I do too. And you know, every time I do one of these, I learn something new, because it's always a new student who shares a unique perspective or a new idea. So I really do like it. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.